Hi, Mackenzie.
Hey, Megan.
Thanks for joining me. You've got the best tan right now.
Everyone's been saying that. I finally bought my new house, so now I have a backyard. I train, go home, get my tan on, and get back to training. So it's definitely more comfortable. But yeah, I mean, everyone's saying that, so I'm excited. I'm happy.
It's a good award to have, best tan.
Yeah.
So I want to get to know who Mackenzie was before the UFC, because I worked with you for a long time, but I don't know that much about your early life. So for those of us that know your dad, we know him as Megaton Diaz and this force in the jiu-jitsu world. But what was it like growing up with him as your dad?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, my dad has always been like my superhero. You know, for me growing up, I thought he was like a celebrity. The jiu-jitsu community, it's so tight, it's packed, but you think it's little, but it's actually pretty big. Everyone's friends. Everyone takes care, has each other's back. And so I'd be like growing up, I grew up, when my strength trainer, Rogério Camões, I grew up watching him train my dad when I was little on the beach in Brazil. And I was little, like maybe 5 years old. And I thought, like, man, that's so cool. My dad's running, doing sprints, jumping jacks, push-ups on the beach. And I'm like, man, that looks so cool, looks so fun, you know? And today, he's my strength trainer for, you know, all my fights in the UFC. My dad would go to the tournaments. I used to see him cut weight, running. He would take care of me, you know, take me to the beach, take me to training, but he was always focused on his diet and things like that. So I saw him go to Abu Dhabi, compete the ADCC, first ADCC in Abu Dhabi, and he told me that in the palace in Abu Dhabi, they had like horse pools for the horses, you know? And so all these stories just growing up of all these competitions that my dad did, the lifestyle that he did, that he has, it was great, you know? It was hard for me to not want to do that, you know, and be like that. And my dad always told me that he didn't, when he found out he had a girl, he felt like, oh, he couldn't pressure me to do fighting, you know? Like, of course he would like it, but I think if he was a boy, he'd probably be a little bit more tough on them, you know? But a girl, hey, if she wants to dance or something, that's okay. But just being along and following along on his lifestyle, it was impossible for me to not want to be like him, you know? So I always like would go to the tournaments. People like, oh, that's Megaton's daughter, you know. Oh, your dad's so good. Your dad's so good. And as I started to compete, I already kind of had that attention from a very young age, as Megaton's daughter, looking like. And I had some moves, you know. I guess you know, for being 6 years old, I was doing kind of some positions a little bit more technical than the other 6-year-old kids, you know. And it was back in my day, you know, 1998, you know, this time. Was girls would fight with the boys. You know, now they have the girls division and the boys division. Back in my time, I was beating up on the little boys, you know. So it was this little girl, Megaton's daughter, fighting the boys. A lot of the boys would cry, you know, and then like they'd come and want to play games after, play tags around the tournament while there's more fights going on. So I grew up like that, you know. In the beginning, it wasn't pressure. It was exciting, like, oh, Megaton's daughter. People like would start to watch, kind of a lot of media for the jiu-jitsu world. But it started to be a little bit, oh man, I need to make him proud, you know. I wanted to make my dad proud. He's a judo black belt, so I think that helped me a lot in my whole career. You know, I had good stand-up game, you know, takedowns, my passing, you know, my guard game. So I was always very well-rounded, you know. In jiu-jitsu, you find a lot of people that, or they're more guard player, or they're more stand-up, or they're more the top game, you know, passing. And I think because of my dad, and I wanted to always make him proud, I worked a lot on being as well-rounded fighter as possible. So it was great, you know. I mean, for sure, he's the reason why I have all the success I have today, you know. With the reason why Gabby Garcia, she's almost 240 pounds, you know. She's one of the girls that I fought, and she beat me lots of times, but I beat her too. And my stepmom, Luciana Diaz, she taught me jiu-jitsu since I'm little. She beat Gabby Garcia too, you know. So it's like our family is very close and help push each other to just keep accomplishing things that people never thought that we would accomplish, you know. So it's really, really good to have that circle and grow up with that type of lifestyle.
I mean, it's truly incredible to think about the things you saw as a little kid and got to experience. Yeah. Do you remember the first time you ever really did jiu-jitsu, whether it was the first time you put on a gi or the first time you actually competed?
My first competition, I do remember my first competition. I was 5 years old, and I fought a girl, and I was fighting her, and then my dad's, coaching me, and he's telling me to do a sotogari, that's like a takedown. And I look at him, while he's coaching me, and the girl takes me down, and that fight's over, like she wins the fight. So my first ever fight in jiu-jitsu, I lost, and I remember I was like crying, and after that I was like, man, I need to go back and I need to fight, and I want to win, and I want to come back and win. So I always remember that first fight that I lost, and it was against a girl. It was very like, stays in my mind because, like I said, we never fight girls really. It was always with guys, with boys. So my first fight was against a girl, and then and I remember because I looked at him, as a kid, you're like, okay, and then the person goes and you're like, oh, you need to go through these things. And then one very like big memory I have is when the first time I went and fought a girl like maybe 2-3 categories bigger than me. There was no one in the my bracket, and my dad said, hey, we have a girl for each fight, but she's like 20, almost 30 pounds heavier. And I was maybe 10, so I was like, okay, if my dad's telling me to do it, I'll do it. And I went and I fought her and I won. I remember that was like kind of those little things that my dad was already starting to like push me and to get kind of that fighting spirit, and not being scared to fight in your weight class bigger, and just going through adversity. My dad would never like babied me, he always put me with a lot of adversity, and I'm so grateful for that.
I mean, it certainly paid off. You mentioned Gabby Garcia. I remember UFC matchmaker Sean Shelby watching a video of you competing against Gabby years and years before you were signed to the UFC. And he was like, this girl is a phenom. She's amazing. And he was talking about you. So as you go through life and you have all these jiu-jitsu accolades starting to pile up, you basically won like every competition there is to win all around the world in, your weight class, open weight classes. It's crazy, Mackenzie. Your resume in the jiu-jitsu world is absolutely outstanding and on another level. But for you, was fighting ever in the back of your mind, like mixed martial arts, or was it always jiu-jitsu forward?
Always jiu-jitsu, I never thought about MMA. I never... I watched Royce Gracie when he fought Matt Hughes. He lost, but my dad was always against it, My dad always said, like, jiu-jitsu lifestyle, jiu-jitsu forever, He always for the, what jiu-jitsu brings, the smaller or, maybe the weaker person can defend or even maybe beat the stronger and bigger person, So he always believed in that. And of course he didn't want to see his daughter get punched in the face, so he was always like, no, look, we travel around the world, we meet so many people, I was at a very good moment in my career when I did make the transition to UFC, to MMA. So, it wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm ready to retire, that, I could have maybe accomplished a lot more things in jiu-jitsu the moment I decided to make the transition. But my dad's like, no, look how we are, you have a very comfortable life, we, have a house and travel and all these things. But it was right when like Ronda Rousey was happening, and I was like, okay, so girls can make a living, with MMA. I think that was the biggest thing, for me, like, okay, I had a really good, I had my own living in jiu-jitsu. So for me to leave that on the side, something that I love, of course I had a lot of surgeries, knee injuries, shoulder, all these things. But to leave that and go to some kind of the unknown, I didn't know if I would be okay getting punched in the face. I didn't know if I would like it or not. Was really hard for me to make that decision. But Ronda was happening, so I saw like, okay, she's doing good, she can make a living off of MMA. And especially seeing her do it with arm bars, something very similar to what I do, So I was like, man, she has so much success. And I saw where, okay, the ground game is missing, at least for the women's MMA, So I said, okay, that already kind of opened up my mind to MMA. So that was like 2016, way later in my career, But I didn't tell my dad yet, that I was thinking about it. Then I started training at the MMA lab, just to have some extra trainings for my jiu-jitsu titles, So that's one thing that I train. But once I accomplished something, the world title, Pan American title, European, I said, okay, I won, but let me add another thing, because the girls are going to come with something to come with something new to beat me, so let me add another thing to my game. So I went to the lab, started training some no-gi there with them, some wrestling, and then all the guys, you should do MMA, you should do it, you should try it. I said, okay, I'll try some trainings, put the gloves on a little bit. And then I started to like it, and I started to, I just announced like, okay, I'm making the transition Sean Shelby called me up, I never had one fight of MMA, nothing. Sean Shelby, let me come out and talk to you and see you, and let me just hear me out a little bit. And I said, okay, come on. And so then I signed with him, and it's crazy. I talked to him the other, maybe the last fight, I don't know, in Vegas or where we were, but I always say, man, you saw potential in me that I didn't even see in myself. When I made the transition, I said, let me try this new thing. I didn't even think about the belt, and I thought just to let me try it. So now, after Moa, my daughter, is born, now that I see how my training focused more on MMA, now I see the potential to be the champion, and that's something that he already saw way before him. But I guess they're used to that, right? They're scouters, they can see that talent from, miles away.
But I think it's also fair to say you're definitely a special talent as well. Before we get into where you're at now, I'm curious, what was your dad's eventual reaction once he first found out, wow, she's really doing this?
Yeah, he was against it, he was, oh, I don't know, I don't think you should do this, he didn't. It took him, I had, I think, about 5 fights outside of the UFC before I went to the UFC. And then I fought in March of 2018. My debut in the UFC in Vegas, and he still didn't go see me watch live. And then my first fight he saw me watch live was in Brazil. That I had weight issues, I missed weight. I was able to kind of get a knockdown and submit, but that was my first. So my 7th fight in MMA that he went actually watched me live. So I kind of had to convince him a little bit that he, was able to trust the fact that, okay, she kind of knows what she's doing a little bit. She's doing okay. And it was a little crazy. My dad's been my coach my whole life, my whole jiu-jitsu career. He was my coach. And it's great, he's my best friend. He was always my best friend. But when I made the MMA transition, from what I heard, a lot of Mayweather, a lot of fighters who have their father as coaches, their relationship can get a little bit,
It can change.
Yes, it can be a little bit hard. So I really wanted to just kind of have my dad as a supporter, in the beginning. I said, Dad, I don't want you to be my coach for this journey right now, this phase of my life. I want to enjoy life a little bit with you just as my dad, not like. And so I did that. But then it got to a point, Dad, I need you back in my circle, because you start to realize, it's like there's a coach here who wants you on their team. There's a coach here that wants you on their team. And it's like, man, it's hard to trust people, It's you need your circle tight and know that they want the best intention for you, And to have my dad, no one wants the best for me more than my own parents, So I said, no, come back, Dad, we're good. So it's good. He thinks I'm a little bit hard. I am tough-headed, he'll tell me something, and sometimes I think I know better, but he kind of lets me make my own mistakes, and then later he said, I told you so, And I said, yeah, you did tell me, But yeah, so finally he came and watched me live. I think I had maybe 2 more fights, and then he became in my corner, and now he won't leave my corner ever.
I love that. Full support from Dad now.
Yes.
It's like a 180.
Yeah.
So Moa came in 2019 after just a couple of UFC fights.
Yeah.
For you as a high-level athlete who's kind of new on the journey and you're fighting under the UFC banner, what was that time out for pregnancy like?
The timeout was so important, I think. It was, like I said before, I came from my jiu-jitsu career. I was at the highest moment of my jiu-jitsu career. So, I started training when I was 3 years old. 5 years old, I started competing, and it was just that lifestyle, I didn't go to prom. I didn't go to a lot of, the homecomings, the things that you do. I had a great growing up. I had friends from school and stuff, but my life was always very different. Always I missed a lot of school. Of course, I always made up my work and everything, but always competing. And so I think I got to a point where I was just competing for the money, competing just to have fun, just for the fame, I was just burnt out, I wanted to enjoy life a little bit, and, in that craziness of, having a little rebellious time, which I think is normal, I was 20, maybe 23, 24, I think I was 22, 23, so I was just having a fun time, and then I became pregnant, having so much fun, I became pregnant, and I had the best present I could have, gift. And I took I found out actually with 3-4 months pregnant, I took pregnancy tests, it came out negative, I was tired, but I said, man, maybe because I'm training a lot, so that's probably what it is. So I just kept training and training and training, and then finally, no, something's up, Took another one, then it came out positive. So I was like almost 4 months pregnant when I found out, yeah. And so then after that, so from 4 to 9 months, I took like complete rest. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't work out, anything. I went to the beach. I traveled. I kind of just relaxed, and I tried to enjoy my pregnancy the most possible. I didn't even announce I was pregnant until I was like about 7 months pregnant,
Wow.
to everyone. So kind of kept it really down low. And I knew what people would say. Oh, she's never gonna come back. She's not gonna be the same. Oh, it's over her career, So I was preparing myself for that, and I knew I was gonna come back fighting, So for me, it was like the perfect moment to just kind of recharge and really find what I love to do. And I'm just like pregnant, but I'm watching the fights, and I watched McGregor with Khabib, I watched so many of these huge fights, Ronda, and I'm like, man, I need to get back in there, that's what I want to do. That's what I need to do, So it was really good for me to just really come back to reality, get my priorities straight, figure out what I want to do, and that's what I needed. And then when she came, that was the motivation I needed. So I had the will, and then I had the motivation, and then that just kind of catapulted me to get here today and be ready for the belt one day.
It's like a different version of you, not in terms of personality or anything, but what we see competitively since becoming a mom. But you came back 4 months after giving birth, which is insane to even think about on a physical and mental aspect. I mean, it's wild. Did you say, hey, I have to come back and tell all these people I told you so? Or was it something else that drove you to return so soon when people are still, kind of really resting at that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was breastfeeding before I went into the ring, you know what I mean? So I'm like breastfeeding, and okay, here's Moa, let me go and get punched and punch someone in the face. It's like, at the time, I didn't even know too much about pregnancy, so I didn't know too much about hormonal wise, I was always like rolling my ankles, because I guess your body produces something that makes the joints, loose, like more looser, so I was always like rolling my ankles in training. I didn't even know how much my training partners were really pushing me, because, I mean, for sure they felt something, to go and the baby's crying on the side, and for me, I was just like, oh, so focused. I could feel a little bit like, my manager, Danny, Sean, or Mick, they were like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure you want to get back? I was like, yeah, I'm good. My weight's good. My last fight, I had missed weight, so I really wanted to show, hey, I can make weight. I'm back. But in jiu-jitsu, I had knee surgeries, and one of my biggest blows and my biggest learning experience I had in jiu-jitsu was I tore my ACL 1 month before the ADCC championships, my first ADCC championships. That was my dream. My dad had gone to the whole horse thing, so it was my dream to go and fight in the ADCC, and I was heartbroken. I did my surgery the day of the ADCC, and I had just gotten my black belt, and I was the next big star and to become the black belt. And I was like, man, it really pushed me back. And I came back to competing with 4 months after my ACL surgery. And usually it's 6 months, but I came back 4 months. I lost. I got third place, but I lost. But it's kind of that ring rust. That ring rust they said? That was the same mentality I had with jiu-jitsu, I 6 months would be the world championships. So I said, man, let me get back into competing before a tournament a little bit smaller. I don't want my first tournament to be back right at the ADCC or at the World Championships. Maybe I'll have a couple more months to train, but I think it'll be more mental barrier I'll have to face. I want to make sure I feel hey, nothing happened, not be nervous. And that was what I wanted in the UFC, because of that experience I had, I said, man, it was a risk I was willing to take. I knew that the risk of me losing was higher. But I prefer to risk maybe getting a loss in my record, be back, feeling it, getting back into getting punched in the face 100% with 4-ounce gloves, and feel what it feels like to be making the walk, that adrenaline. So that's kind of just what my jiu-jitsu experience helped me to make that decision to come back at 4 months, And of course, at the time, I thought that I still think I could have won. I still could have won, but I thought I was 100%. But I had no idea how much my body would change, how much better I could get, And now Moa, 3 years old, I'm totally way more like professional, way, my body fat's changed. Everything's just changed, My training's changed. My coaches have changed. Everything. And I had no idea how much of a better athlete I could become, but it's all part of the process, Maybe I would have been too nervous, who knows? So I don't regret anything. It's all part of my story. I ended up fighting Nina Nunes in her first fight back, So I hope, like, in some type of way, maybe that even inspired some of the girls, to come back and be fighting. So it's good, I'm happy I made that decision.
It's also, I think, inspiring to young athletes, not just mixed martial artists, but female athletes across the board, that you can enjoy motherhood and have that gift and that, responsibility on your plate while also competing and having those athletic gifts and responsibilities as well. I mean, do you feel like it's something you've connected with other people about, being able to be a mom while actively competing?
Oh, I think so. It's definitely hard, It's I think about like the champions, not Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena, they were moms, so they kind of help push that, hey, you can do it. But I mean, I think like Rose, Zhang Weili, Joanna, all these girls, it's like, they don't have kids right now, Not that everyone has problems, everyone has, difficulties, but the tension in athletes and kids, it's like what the athlete mostly needs is training and rest, and that what the kids have is energy, and they need to spend the energy. So they don't go too easily together, When I need to rest to be ready for it, Moa's like, hey, let's go, let's play. I'm like, and then at the same time, I train so much that as a mom, I'm sure the dads too. I can't speak for dads, because I'm not a dad. But as a mom, you want to have that connection. I breastfed until about 9 months. With the whole pandemic, wow. I stopped because of the pandemic. I couldn't take her to the fight. So 9 months together with your baby, you guys are together all the time, and then you're training, and you kind of stop that, connection. And I miss her all the time, and I'm training. Always the camps for me is the worst, because I get home at night, she's already asleep, so I go in, I give her a kiss, I wake up in the morning, I take her to school now she started school 2 weeks, she started school now, so it's a new phase of her life, but I take her, sometimes take her to training, but I'm training and I see her just kind of wandering around at the gym, it's not really one-on-one time together, so I miss that, I'm like, man, in camps I'm training, but it's all worth it, because I'm just trying to do this, for my dreams too, I want her to see that you should always put your dreams, in priority. I hope she takes that to her life too. I think just because I'm a mom, I can't forget what my dreams are, and I just give up on my dreams. And for her to see, we need to open, you need to give up certain things to accomplish other things. Nothing comes easy in life. You need to work hard. It's not going to be working hard and we win everything. We work hard and still lose, and that's part of the thing. But we need to keep standing, get back up. So all these kind of come into play as me trying to be the best mom I can be and teach these values to her. These are always the values I want to teach her. So it's hard. It's definitely hard. But I think, from what the feedback I get from followers, from, the social media, a lot of people connect and say, like, man, it's really, really cool to see that, and it inspired them in some way to not be nervous when they get pregnant, when they get the news that they're pregnant, to not think that, man, their life is just going to be all about the kid. No, they can have a family and train and, good support team and be able to do it.
Okay, so you're preparing for your second UFC main event, and this one has you in a position with a big win. You could be very close to a world title. For you, what does the landscape to the belt look like?
Man, I think a good win on this fight will definitely get me, with attention. I thought that about my last one with Marina Rodriguez too. Unfortunately it was a loss. So, for me, the goal is just to win my first main event, my very first main event I lost. So I want to get my first main event win, So, and especially if I can get another performance of the night bonus, something like that. I think I'm tied with the most performance of the night bonuses in the strawweight division. So I'm definitely trying to, break records, be a fighter that everyone wants to see. I think all of that, the marketing, the type of fighter, the type of fights you do is what kind of guides you into getting that opportunity to fight for the belt. The UFC is not just, whoever is winning will get that opportunity. It has a lot of things to do with marketing, all this stuff. So I think if I can get a good win on this, who knows? Carla Esparza, I know she just won. I know she's like kind of taking her time. I don't know what her plans are. Definitely the strawweight division a little bit like on hold, trying to see who's gonna fight with Zhang Weili, if Carla, everything like that. But if they're gonna have an interim belt, so we'll see. They had asked me a little bit if I'd be interested in the interim belt. I said, of course, of course, I'm not gonna miss this opportunity. I'm not saying I'm prepared for it right now, but if they give me the date, I'll make sure I'll be prepared for that, So definitely, I'm just trying to be the best friend I can be right now, and I'm trying to be prepared for whoever will have the belt by the time I get there, So I definitely am looking for a great performance against Xiaonan Yan.
Yan Xiaonan.
Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan. And have a good performance, a good fight with her, and we'll see what comes after that. But I definitely see the belt coming soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see the belt coming soon for you. But you have a really good outlook on things where you take a lot from both wins and losses. In that first main event experience, Mackenzie, what did you take away that you can bring with you to grow into your second and then eventually into title contention?
So with my fight with Marina, I really felt like her strategic, she's a very strategic fighter, she has a lot of she has a few like draws and split decisions, and I think that's a lot because she'll feels out in the first round. She's good at like pointing, making points. Sometimes she'll kind of put the pressure on, and that's part of the game. You're gonna have the fighters that don't even think about strategy and just go up there, and that's how I always was. I just like going to the fight. That's kind of my first UFC fight. I just stayed 3 rounds basically standing up, and the UFC signed me for my jiu-jitsu, and I went there and I was doing 3 rounds standing up, So really just kind of, that's just like that dog in me, to go and be a fighter and, get hit and keep hitting and stuff like that. And then it was hard for me to like understand that they have fighters who are good at being points, and hey, you don't always have to get hit in the face a whole bunch of times, you can be strategic and you can win like that too. And for me, having to learn how to fight someone like that, because as I start to get higher to the top, I start to see that these girls are mature fighters, they're experienced, and they know how to fight, on the point game too, And so that's where I think the biggest lesson I learned is like, okay, accept that I'm gonna fight more girls like that, no one wants to lose, I think sometimes I forgot about the loss, and I just went in to go and win. So now I really realize, okay, I can't doubt myself, as in I need to be confident in my decisions, if I'm going to go forward, go forward. If I'm already getting hit, keep going, okay, there's not a problem to take back some rest a little bit. Okay, let me play strategic too. So I'm really becoming more mature fighter, As soon as I went to the UFC, even before the UFC, people, the next Ronda Rousey, So I think even the fans and stuff, they were kind of catapulting me on a very fast track, And I see like Charlize Oliveira, who's, more than 10 years in the UFC, has lots of great fights, lots of bonuses, some crazy losses,
Yep.
But it's all part of his story. And now I think it's going to be a long time until someone takes the belt away from him, And that's a big inspiration for me. Like, hey, we don't need to take everything so fast, You have your time, learn. Each fight you learn from the wins, from the losses, and all this is part of your story. So I'm like, hey, I don't need to get to the belt so fast, Of course, if I'm ready, I'm ready, But I think we'll be able to tell when I'm ready. When I fought Marina, I wasn't ready to get the belt. Probably if I beat her, I would be the next fight was for the belt, And now I see at that time, I wouldn't be ready for the belt at that time, So
yeah.
Now who knows? We'll see. Yan will be my next opportunity to find out how I am. We can't tell in the training. No one I fight in the training is like the girls I fight in the gym. And I think a lot of people they think, oh, you need to train in the gym like you're gonna fight in the fight. But in the gym, the girls they fight with me. They go and they want to punch me too. We try different things. They try to take me down, all these things. When I go in the fight, I take 1 step forward. The girls take 10 steps back. You know, it's nothing like how I am in training. So I realized, okay, even just from watching the fights, I watch the guys, man, they're not all technical, you know? I mean, honestly, they're not, you can tell that like out of the 100% technique we try to do in the training, maybe like 60% comes out, you know? Most of the fights, you know, they do the right technique, but you can tell there's way more heart in the fights, you know? And they don't care. They don't care what people say. If their backhand was a little bit turned to the side, if they're judging that their overhand was a little bit too over or too under, you know? I said, man, everyone's judging, but no one, all they care is to win, you know? If they win because they won by points, if they win by split decision, if they win because they did a crazy knockout that wasn't nothing technical, but it worked, no one cares, you know? They just want to see us fight, you know? And that's what we're training to do. So in the training, I train my 100%, the most technique, but I know that in the fight, I try to do the best technique because I know the fight's going to come out maybe 60%, 70%, you know? So yeah, I'm just being the best fighter I can be, you know? It's all part of the process, you know? The strategic, the mental part of it, maturing as a fighter in the UFC, you know? So I feel like a lot of the fans, they really got to see me develop as a jiu-jitsu girl, you know? Even like you see my body, you know? If someone punches me, I kind of like flow back, you know? Maybe it wasn't even a strong punch, but in jiu-jitsu, we go with the leverage, you know? Someone puts the strength on us and we like, okay, come here, you know? We know how to guide. We use a lot of leverage. We don't have this impact, you know? So even just as a jiu-jitsu girl going into this MMA world where you need to have that impact, you need to have a base, you need to get punched and keep going forward, it's totally different. So I'm so happy that, you know, the fans were able to see me develop, and I think they can show that anyone can do it. You know, if that's what they want to do, they can learn to do ground, they can learn to do stand-up, they can learn to do wrestling, they can learn to be a fighter, you know?
It seems like Jason Perillo has a great amount of respect for that jiu-jitsu background and the way you approach striking because of it. What's that relationship like with you guys?
Oh, it's so good. Coach, he's such a character. Perillo, he's such a character. I love him, man. He's great. I think one of the best things I think that he likes about me is just how many years I have in competition, you know? I think for a coach and for the fighter, you know, the hardest thing is like when the fighter is so good in the gym, but in the fight, they freeze, you know, or it just doesn't come out the stuff that they train, you know. And I'm kind of the opposite. In the training, I get beat up all the time. People are like, "Is that Mackenzie? Is that Mackenzie Dern there?" Like they don't expect that the girl they see in the fight is the one that's getting beat up in the training, you know. But it's because so many years of training, I already know how to train. You know, I know how to put myself in bad situations to try and fix my weaknesses, you know. I don't try to win every training. I try to work on everything that I'm bad at, you know. So of course I'm gonna get beat up in the training, you know. I'm working my stand-up, I'm working wrestling, I'm working my takedowns, things that I'm not good at, and a lot of time I don't get them, you know. But eventually, over and over and over again, in the fight where I have the adrenaline, I'm used to that. I don't get nervous for the fight, you know. I know that if I do all my training in the fight, nothing's gonna surprise me, you know, nothing. I know I can lose, I know I can win. Those are the two options that can happen. I can get knocked out, I can, you know, get injured, but probably she's gonna punch me, kick me, that's it, you know. It's like, for sure, I think that maybe the people I'm fighting, they are a lot more in the unknown with my jiu-jitsu background, because I think I know positions that maybe they never even dreamed of, you know. I know some crazy submissions, you know, that all of a sudden I can jump guard and jump on like the flying armbar or something, you know, some things crazy that they never even imagined, you know. But so far, I mean, flying, you know, back fist, things like that. So far, I've seen almost all of it, you know. So I think he really enjoys that I'm a competitor my whole life, you know, and I think that gives him a lot of you know, it makes him motivated. You know, it's hard for a coach, you know, like, man, of course they're going to be with their fighter no matter what. But I think he really says like, okay, I can work with this, you know, I just need to get her to be confident. I just need to, you know, he knows the right things to say to me, how to get me to understand things. Sometimes I can tell he's saying like, oh, turn your shoulder. He's been telling me like to turn my shoulders, I don't know, almost a year and a half. Finally, like maybe 1 month ago, I did a punch, and I think I turned my shoulder. Yes, that's how it is, you know? And it's like, man, coach, you have so much patience, you know? But that's what they need, you know? And he definitely has that. He has the communication. He definitely knows how to, like, not pressure me too much, but how to get me to stay motivated at the same time. Because since I grew up my whole life with my dad being my coach, imagine, like, our gym was like my house, you know? So I always go to the gym. I kind of do whatever I want at the gym, you know? So it's hard for me to, like, follow the rules of a different, you know what I mean? Like, man, I can't do, you know, I grew up my whole life kind of having my own training, my own hours, my own things like that, you know? So I'm a fighter that it's a little bit hard for me to work, you know, on certain, you know, hours and things like that, you know. I'm not good, like, under that pressure of, like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you know. I'm a lot more better when they kind of help me be more free and I can make my own decisions. And, hey, coach, yeah, or what time are you training, you know, and let me kind of go after that, you know. And he really understands that. I mean, he's been with BJ Penn, Chris Cyborg, Mike Bisping. He's with Luke, Cheeto, and Cheeto too, man. Cheeto at the training, man. We just push each other so much. So I think coach is so happy to have, like, two top. I mean, we're both. I think Cheeto's 5 or 4 or something like that too. You know, so two almost there fighters, and we kind of both push each other, and we're both just hungry. So it's good. He's happy, and a happy coach. You know, is a happy fighter.
And you guys both seem to be free-spirited sort of fighters in terms of the training aspect as well, you and Cheeto. But, you know, how are you and your team of coaches, who are all so great, but including Jason Perillo and your dad, how are you guys approaching this main event fight against Yan?
Yeah, this main event fight against Yan, I mean, the whole goal is to take her to the ground. After the Carla Esparza fight she fought Carla Esparza, you know, she got TKO. That's the goal, you know. Obviously not a TKO necessarily, but we definitely see the weakness is her ground game. We like to see that she's aggressive, standing up. She's not too much walking a lot. I mean, Tisha moved a lot. Marina moved a lot. Young, she's definitely more engaged. And as a grappler, that's what I'm looking for, you know. For me, the worst is to be chasing the whole time. So I don't know. We don't know if she'll come with a different strategy. She's coming off of 2 losses, you know. So, I mean, whoever's coming off of 2 losses, they might want to change, you know. No one wants to get a 3rd loss in a row. Who knows if she'll come out with a new strategy. If she does come out with a different strategy, like, hey, let's be more distant, will she be able to keep it for 5 rounds, you know, something that's totally different than what she's done her whole life? We don't know, you know. But definitely the goal is to be, like, ready for exchange. If we have exchange, she's fast, she's strong, you know. I know it's going to be, like, I'm going to feel it, you know. But I know the goal is for all of us, Rogerio, Perillo, and my dad, is to take to the ground, get the takedown, be able to throw my exchanges, my punches, and get a win, you know. We get a submission. That's the goal.
Well, we certainly look forward to that fight, Mackenzie. Best of luck to you this fall. Before I let you go, I have a few questions that I would love to hear your answers for, but they didn't necessarily fit into our line of conversation. But I've always been curious what it was like for you growing up where you are American and you're Brazilian and you're sort of straddling this line.
Yeah.
Were there times in your life where it was difficult to sort of find your footing with those two very dominant parts of your life?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my whole life, when I was in the United States, like, I've been at school in America, and people say, oh, go back to Brazil. I said, like, man, and this is like, I'm like 7, 12, again in high school, you know, and people in the United States, you know, they don't accept you 100% as American, you know, and then in Brazil, the same thing, you know, they say, like, oh, well, you don't know what it's like to be a true Brazilian because you were born in America, so you have it easy, you know. They always say, like, you have an easy life, you know. It's not the hardships that you have in Brazil, you know. And my whole life, it's been 6 months in the United States, 6 months in Brazil, you know. Always back and forth. So for me, I grew up. My biological mom is American. My dad is Brazilian. I have a stepfather American and a stepmother Brazilian. So I grew up with both households. My mom, she got married later, so she was a single mom until I was 10 years old. So she was a big inspiration for me in being a single mom, working. She worked, like, job all the way until, like, midnight, and just trying to. And opportunity, like how I saw she was so motivated, the opportunities that United States gave, for my mom, to be able to work and pay for, single daughter, have her apartment, have her things. And now she's, man, so successful in a bank. She's like manager, all these things. She didn't go to college and she accomplished all these things. My dad that came from Brazil to the United States with $400 in his pocket, accomplished his academy, everything he has today, So it's like, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that United States, that I know that my dad from Brazil came here, met my mom here. So I love United States, that's where I was born. My dad came here. But my culture, I grew up, because my mom worked so much, and my dad, he had a gym, since I was born, he had a jiu-jitsu gym. So it's, I didn't need a babysitter, I just would grew up with my mom, with my dad and my stepmom. That's Brazilian culture in the house, So it was rice, beans, and steak all the day. All the time. My dad, the beginning years, my dad's lived more in the United States now than he's lived in Brazil,
Wow.
So my dad is way more American today's days than he is Brazilian. But when I was little, he was way more Brazilian, So he always talked with accent. They always talked to me in Portuguese, I didn't want to speak Portuguese because I felt embarrassed to speak Portuguese, because at school, all my friends speak English. No one spoke Portuguese, So, the same way, go back to Brazil. I definitely didn't want to speak Portuguese, I understood it, but I didn't want to speak it, But I have so much family in Brazil. And I grew up a lot with the Brazilian culture. It wasn't just like, I don't know, it wasn't just like, oh, yes, I just have a Brazilian dad, and we never, I was so much involved with both, So I'm so thankful. I think I have like the opportunities of the United States with like that heart, and that, to go after the things in Brazil, that a lot of the Brazilian culture has. But yeah, it's so hard. I feel like if I'm winning, or the United States or Brazil say, yeah, she's Brazilian. Yeah, she's American. If I'm losing, oh, no, she's Brazilian, or oh, no, she's American, So, I'm always just trying to stay true to who I am, I'm so proud of both my cultures. I think I have the two best martial, sport, fighting-driven nationalities in my blood. I think the United States and Brazil are the best fighters that they have right now, So I'm so proud of that. And yeah, I mean, whoever can connect to me on those levels, from my Brazilian culture, from my American culture, I'm happy. If they don't want to accept it, hey, I mean, I think it's more like, man, they wish they could have that, than actually go be against it, because it's like, man, they both are such great countries, and I'm so proud to be, Brazilian and American.
And that combination, like we have talked about, really led to this outstanding jiu-jitsu career. When you sort of look back at your resume of accomplishments, is there one particular thing in your jiu-jitsu life that you are most proud of?
One thing. I mean, I'm gonna say like two. I think
okay, I love it.
Yeah. One I think is like my year. I had 2015. I won all the world titles in the same year. I won the ADCC World Championship, the IBJJF World Championship, and the Abu Dhabi World Championship all in the same year. So I think that year, to be able to accomplish everything was a dream come true. That was everything I ever wished I could do, and to be able to get them all in the same year, after my surgery, after all these things, was my biggest accomplishment. Was like the biggest thing I could do for my dad. Dedicate all these things. My dad, he's 25 years competing in the world championships, and so for me to be able to get that title for him and dedicate it to him, was my biggest accomplishment, and the number one athlete and fighter in that year, so it was like the best year I could have. And then my absolute world title in Abu Dhabi against Gabby Garcia and things like that. And I think that one, of course, I'm so happy to have won the absolute, but I think there was a big change in the jiu-jitsu community, because jiu-jitsu community, like I said, we all feel each other's pain and feel each other's happiness and sadness and all these things. And the jiu-jitsu community was very like dismotivated a little bit, because Gabby, she was just winning everything. She was more than like 10 years without getting beat, and when I beat her, I was at the smallest division at this tournament, so I was like 115 pounds, and I never fought 115 pounds, I always fought 129. So I was at the smallest weight division, and then I beat her in the biggest weight division, and it just changed the energy in the jiu-jitsu community. People were like more motivated again, you know. More people were doing the absolute division again. People were excited, like, man, kind of it brought back the energy of why jiu-jitsu, you know, why we believe in jiu-jitsu, you know, was exactly because of that. For the small person to be able to defend themselves or even beat the bigger person, you know. So I think that was one of the biggest like accomplishments I have, as in from what I could give back to the jiu-jitsu community and inspire them. And hopefully I think my next biggest accomplishment will be the UFC belt as a jiu-jitsu, you know, jiu-jitsu girl, and be able to say, hey, we can go there and we can win. If I win by jiu-jitsu, great. If I win by a knockout, even better, you know. It's like a jiu-jitsu girl that can get that too, you know. So yeah, those are my best accomplishments.
Continuing to give back to the community that gave you so much.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you started jiu-jitsu when you were 3, and Moa's 3.
Yes.
Has she officially started jiu-jitsu? I know she's grown up on a mat, but I mean, is it official yet?
Yes, no. She started like 2 years and almost 3 months, about 2 years and 9 months. You know, she was like trying to do jiu-jitsu with the kids at school or the kids on the playground, you know, and I mean, even though like, oh, it's so cute, but I mean, these kids are, you know, they're like normal, like not, they don't do jiu-jitsu, you know, so, you know, she's like trying to take them to the ground and they're kind of getting like, oh, mom, you know, and calling the parents, and I'm like, no, but so I like, finally I was training her, of course, at home, but finally I let her loose at a gym. You know, she trains in Costa Mesa. She trains there like with the other kids that are used to, you know, they're used to it. They know it's normal to fall on the ground, you know, and she loves it. You know, it's more, she knows already everything that they're doing, but it's more just to let her to be able to do it on other little kids, you know. So it's really great. It's fun. But I honestly, I think she is more in love with the striking. So for me as a jiu-jitsu mom, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I really want her to stay on the I want her to get a good jiu-jitsu base and then go to the striking and stuff like that, you know. But I had her at this part of my life, you know, so she sees me doing the striking way more than she sees me doing jiu-jitsu, you know. She hasn't seen my jiu-jitsu career. She wasn't able to get that part of my life, you know. We watch sometimes my fights from back in the day and things like that, and she watches it and she says, oh, pass the guard, and says things like that, you know, but she's used to seeing like punch in the face and stuff like that, so I think she's more of a striker.
Will you be okay if she says, Mom, I want to follow in your footsteps and be a UFC fighter?
Yeah, my heart, you know. I mean, of course, I don't want her to. Honestly, for me, I don't want her to be I would like jiu-jitsu, you know, but to be in MMA, you know, I would like her to be, I don't know, she could be a surfer, jiu-jitsu, I don't know, doctor, anything else, but in MMA, now I understand my dad, you know, to see them get punched in the face, you know, it's going to be hard for me. But I'm going to support my daughter no matter what, you know. If she comes to me and says, Mom, I want to be a fighter, you know, I want to do MMA, I'm going to give her all the tools, I'm going to give her all the advice, the experience. I'm going to say, okay, that's what you want to do, let's go, you know. I'll take her under my wing and I'll give her try to guide her in the best path as possible, you know, for sure.
She can have her mom and her grandfather in her corner then.
Yes. No, that's the best thing, to have my dad in the corner, you know. He's in my corner, of course, you know, to help me with my jiu-jitsu. But during fight week, it's Grandpa and Moa, you know. I'm like, Dad, can you please stay with Moa, you know? And he takes her, and I see them like, she like pulses here, then he goes and pulls her here. I'm like, Dad, you know. So they go at it with each other, and yeah, he's way more than just, you know, a jiu-jitsu coach for me. You know, he's that support system with Moa and everything. So it's great. I
love that. My final question before I let you go: who cried more on her first day of school? You or her?
Oh, no, definitely. Well, she didn't cry. I didn't cry. Wesley cried, you know. But the dad, he was crying so much for me, because she was going to the gym with me all the time, you know. And I could see, like, man, with other kids, you know, she's going to be so much, she's going to have so much more fun, you know. When she was asking to go to school, she was like, all her little friends were already going to school, you know. So she was wanting to go to school, and she was ready for that. And I was ready for that, too, you know. I'm like, okay, you know, you're gonna have so much fun, you know. And all the time at the gym, she was starting to understand to be at the gym. She's like, yes, today she went to the gym with me, you know, and in the morning, and she talks to the coach, she goes and gives water to even the other fighters, you know. And I'm not even training, you know, in sparring, and she's giving water to the other fighters, you know. So she's already in that that vibe of the academy. She knows where she can't go. She can't mess with the weights. She can't mess, with certain things. But to be like a kid, they need to live that life of kids. I grew up in a gym, so I know what it's like to kind of not lose your when you're a kid, that time of being a kid. But I grew up a lot with a lot of adults. My whole life was always around adults, and hearing adult conversations, and I mean, it's good, but you mature a lot. I think you grow up fast, and I want her to really enjoy, being a kid and playing, and, she already sees, mom get punched in the face. It's like, man, not a lot of kids, you're used to seeing that, so I don't want her to grow up so fast, so I knew it was really important for her to go to school, and she was ready for it, and I'm ready for it. I take her to school, so it's good.
I love it so much. Well, Moa's mom, thank you so much for all your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.